Two Kiwis can earn the exact same salary, live in the same city, and end up with completely different lives. One is stressed every single week, watching the account drain before payday. The other is calm, quietly getting ahead. Same pay, same town, totally different outcome. Today, I'm going to walk you through every pay level in New Zealand, from the minimum wage all the way up to the top 1%, and show you exactly what each one actually gets you in real life. What you can rent, what you can drive, whether you can save a single cent, and the one number that matters far more than your salary. Grab a coffee. This one might sting a little. Before we climb the ladder, there are two things you need to understand about money in this country. First, New Zealand has no tax-free threshold. Unlike Australia or the United Kingdom, you are taxed from the very first dollar you earn. There is no free slice at the bottom. Second, and this is the big one, housing is the great divider in New Zealand. Rent here is quoted by the week, not the month. And in Auckland, that weekly number quietly decides almost everything about your life. So as we move up each level, keep your eye on one thing: the gap between what actually lands in your account and what your roof cost you. That gap is the whole game. Let's start at the bottom. Level 1, the minimum wage. In 2026, that's $23.50 an hour, which works out to around $49,000 a year if you're working full-time. After tax, you take home roughly $41,000, or about $790 a week. Now here's the reality check. The median rent for a house in Auckland is around $650 a week. So on the minimum wage, renting a place on your own isn't tight, it's simply impossible. This is the flatting tier. You rent a room in a shared house for $200 to $280 a week. You do your shopping at Pack and Save, you drive an old car or you catch the bus, and at the end of the week there is nothing left over to save. You are not failing. The maths is just brutal. On the minimum wage in Auckland, you are treading water, and treading water is exhausting. Level 2, $60,000. This is below the national median, but it's where a huge number of Kiwis actually sit. Your take-home is around $50,000 a year, or roughly $960 a week. Suddenly you can breathe, just slightly. You might still be flatting or renting a small unit a long way out from the city. Your bills are covered. You can run a modest car. You can even put $50 or $100 a week into KiwiSaver. But make no mistake, you are not getting ahead at this level. You are staying level. One big car repair or one rent increase and the whole thing wobbles. At $60,000, you have stability but very little freedom. Level 3, $70,000. Congratulations, you are now the typical New Zealander. The median salary in 2025 was just under $70,000, which means half the country earns more than this and half earns less. This is the middle of the middle. Your take-home is around $56,000, or about $1,080 a week. On $70,000, you can rent a unit on your own in an outer suburb, around $570 a week. But watch what just happened there. That single rent payment eats more than half of your entire take-home pay. That is the Kiwi squeeze in one sentence. Or you keep flatting, share that cost, and suddenly you can save properly for the very first time. The median income in this country is genuinely comfortable, but only if you make smart choices about that one giant expense. Quick favor while we're here. If this is giving you a clearer picture of where you actually stand, take a second and hit that like button. It really does help more Kiwis find the channel. Right, let's keep climbing, because this is where it gets interesting. Level 4, $85,000. This is roughly the average salary in Auckland, our highest paying city, and it sits comfortably above the national median. Your take-home is about $67,000, or around $1,290 a week. This is the first level where the numbers genuinely start working in your favor. You can rent a decent one-bedroom on your own and still have real money left at the end of the week. You can run a newer car, eat out now and then without guilt, and most importantly, you can start building a proper buffer and putting money into investments every single month. At $85,000, for the first time on this ladder, the gap between your income and your costs is wide enough to actually do something with. This is where wealth quietly begins. Level 5, $100,000, the six-figure salary. For most of us, this number carries a kind of magic. It feels like the moment you've made it. And across most of New Zealand, it genuinely is a strong, comfortable income. Your take-home is around $77,000, or roughly $1,480 a week. You can rent a nice place, take a couple of overseas trips a year, and quietly invest $1,000 a month or more without really feeling the pinch. But here is the twist that catches people off guard. In Auckland, $100,000 is comfortable, but it is not rich. The median Auckland house still costs well over $1 million. So even on a six-figure salary, buying a home means taking on a mortgage that will dominate your budget for decades. 6 figures buys you a great lifestyle. It does not, on its own, make the Auckland property ladder easy. Once again, the gap is what matters. Level 6, $150,000. Now you are a genuine high earner, sitting comfortably in the top 10% of the entire country. Your take-home is around $110,000, or about $2,100 a week. This is real freedom. You can own a home, even in Auckland, and carry the mortgage without it keeping you up at night. You can take the holidays, drive the nice car, and still invest serious money every month on top of all of it. At this level, the question quietly changes. It stops being, "Can I afford to live?" and becomes, "How fast do I want to build wealth?" And here's the key. The people on this rung who stay disciplined, who keep that gap wide and put it to work, are the ones who reach financial independence years, sometimes decades, ahead of everyone else on the same salary. Level 7, $200,000 and above. Welcome to the top 1 to 2% of New Zealand earners. Your take-home is around $143,000 a year. At this level, money stops being about survival, or even comfort, and becomes purely about choices. And here is where New Zealand gets genuinely interesting for high earners. Remember what we said at the very start? This country has no general capital gains tax. So when someone on this income invests in shares or property, and those assets grow in value over the years, that growth is generally completely tax-free. The top earners here don't just bring home a big salary, they get to keep and compound their gains in a way that high earners in most other countries simply cannot. That is how serious wealth actually gets built in New Zealand. But here is your warning. Even at $200,000, lifestyle creep is brutally real. A bigger house, a bigger car, bigger everything. Plenty of people on this exact income still live paycheck to paycheck because their costs grew right alongside their pay. And that brings us to the one number that matters more than every salary I've just listed. It is not what you earn. It is the gap between what you earn and what your life actually costs. I showed you 2 Kiwis at the very start, on identical pay, living completely different lives. And now you know exactly why. One of them let their costs, mostly housing, swallow almost everything they made. The other kept that gap wide and put it straight to work. You can be on $70,000 in Christchurch, owning your home outright, investing every month, and be in a far stronger position than someone on $150,000 renting in central Auckland with 3 car payments. The salary is only ever half the equation. The gap is the other half, and the gap is the half you actually control. And the single smartest thing you can do with that gap, in this country especially, is invest it. Because between Kiwi Saver, our imputation system, and no capital gains tax, New Zealand quietly rewards the people who turn their income into assets. So there you have it. Every pay level in New Zealand, from $49,000 right up to $200,000 and beyond. The minimum wage, where you tread water no matter how hard you try. The median, where smart choices about housing decide your whole life. The six figures that feel like more than they really are once you're standing in Auckland. And the top rungs, where the real game stops being how much you earn and becomes how much you keep. Wherever you happen to sit on that ladder right now, remember this: the gap matters more than the number, and that gap is yours to grow. If this video helped you see where you really stand, do me a favor and hit the like button. It helps more Kiwis find the channel. Subscribe if you're not already, turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one, and I'll see you there.